Hey guys, this is Jay Calderon with Jay Unboxing, reacting to the fight card out in Connecticut, in Uncasville, as a matter of fact, headlined by Adrien Broner's return to action after a 2-year hiatus. Yeah, it was an interesting card in some sense. It had a couple of decent fights on paper. Nothing really panned out, in a sense. The main event with Broner was a little lackluster. Even the heavyweight fight, which I thought between Otto Wallin and Dominic Brazil was going to be the money fight of the card, sort of failed to completely impress. And the opener between Robert Easter and Ryan Martin ultimately ended up becoming a one-sided unanimous decision. So let's get into those results real fast here. Opening up the televised show, you did have, as mentioned, Easter soundly defeating Ryan Martin over the course of 12 rounds of action. Martin had some moments in the second half of the fight, but really just a jab and a couple of lateral steps per round kept Easter winning the fight and totally in control, earning a unanimous decision in the end. In the co-featured bout of the evening, you had, as mentioned, heavyweights Otto Wallin taking on Dominic Brazil, with the former comfortable winning a 12-round decision. Faded a bit down the stretch, but did more than enough to win on all three cards, and yeah, really nothing questionable there. You did have some questions, of course, though, coming up in the main event when Broner won a close, somewhat questionable UD over Jovanie Santiago. Wasn't a lot of action in the fight. Attempts by Jovanie, but probably not skilled enough to really pull it off. And there was a lot of posing and mugging from Broner until probably the second half of the fight, where he probably pulled out the decision in some people's minds by getting a little more active and letting his hands go as the fight wore on. The takeaways for this were a little bit all over the place. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Broner getting away with yet another sort of luxury of being a bigger name in the sport. I mean, here he is, has to lose all this weight prior to the fight. Then he has his legal issues. Everyone overlooks that. He gets into the bubble. Suddenly now the fight goes from 140 to 147. Now he's in a fight, barely does anything, wins a unanimous decision against a guy who, I mean, really at that point, didn't have to show up. He just wasn't going to win this kind of decision. And now, of course, it justifies, in some world anyway, in the world known according to Al Heyman, this justifies a showdown of the likes between, say, Broner and Keith Thurman for later this year, or some fight in that area, in that arena, you know? And it's just one of those things where the guy gets consistent passes because he happens to draw some attention on some level. And I guess we're all guilty of it to some degree because we all do pay him attention, but it just feels as though you're giving a guy all these passes, and on top of that, the fights aren't even living up to it anymore. I mean, he's struggling with a guy who had less than 15 professional bouts to his belt. It's starting to get a little bit silly. In regards to some of the other action, I did have an interesting question about Otto Wallin there, because, or Wallin as the broadcasting team continued to remind me. I did have a question about him though. He's a very skilled guy. Has some decent side to side moving, fast hands. He's a skilled big man, especially for a heavyweight and for his size. My question is, does he have enough skill to make up for the difference in size and his temperament against the best in the division, against and Andy Ruiz, who has a lot more of a killer instinct in him, against a Joshua or a Wilder, who can be outskilled by him perhaps for a few rounds and completely turn the fight around if they land a clean shot. For a heavyweight, you have to be specifically skilled to get away with that kind of stuff, where you have just Floyd Patterson level skills that allow for you to get away with the fact that you don't have a great chin, or that you don't have, the hardest punches or the temperament to go for, the sort of kill that way as a heavyweight. And it's interesting to watch Wallin going forward and kind of determining whether or not he does have just enough skill to get that sort of thing done. Again, right now I would say he's probably in the top of that sort of second echelon of heavyweight contenders out there. He's probably not quite up there with the top 4 or 5, but he's probably in the back half of the top 10. So it'll be interesting to see how he does against like rated opponents and see if he can actually move on and prove his worth on a bigger stage. Final thing I have here as a takeaway is Robert Easter. I don't know what to make of the guy, because I've seen him when he was at 135 pounds before he lost to Mikey Garcia, and he was a skilled guy who could be in some decent fights, but he had some questionable performances, but they were probably more interesting fights too. Even before the Garcia defeat, when he did lose the title, there were a couple of decisions there that could have gone either way, and you just wanted to see him box and move a little bit more, use his range, use his natural abilities to his benefit. Then you watch him do that tonight against Ryan Martin and really make an easy night's work for himself, and the fight just seemed a little flat. And that's not necessarily his fault. I'm not a person who believes in blaming winners. At the end of the day, the person that lost the fight is the one who should have been doing something extra. He lost the fight. He's the one who wasn't doing enough. But at the same time, if you're talking about entertainment value, you do want to see someone who, if they are going to be supremely skilled, if they are going to make a talented fighter in Martin look ordinary, you would hope that they can do it at a level where either they're getting rid of the person or it's so one-sided it becomes almost a show, a display more than a fight. And I don't know if that's what you see with Easter. It'll be interesting to see him move forward at 140 pounds because there are some good fights there, and he is a skilled guy. Maybe him against someone like a Maurice Hooker. But that those kinds of fights could definitely be interesting for him. I mean, even him against maybe like a Devin Haney, who, if he fights Jorge Linares, which is rumored right now, that's one thing. But Easter's a live body who hasn't had all these wars attached to him. So those kind of fights can maybe tell us a little bit more, and it'll be interesting to see in the future how those results go. But yeah, interesting character nonetheless. Anyway, what did you guys think? How did you like the show? What stood out for you? Let me know down in the comments. Love to hear from you. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, follow all that good stuff. Follow me on Twitter, jcalderon_JOB. You can also email me at jonboxing@gmail.com. And until next time.